Should I sell my home or should I rent it out? Hey everyone, I'm Jonathan Sempsrott. I'm with Keyrenter Property Management, located here in beautiful Austin, Texas. I hope you're doing well today. This question that I just mentioned is one that is at the top of many of our clients' minds as they make that decision of what's best for them and for their property moving forward. And I want to give a few ideas here that I'm hopeful will provide some insight. Let me first say that this decision is a weighty one that has a lot of weight behind it, and one that there is no clear-cut right or wrong answer for every single person. There are infinite scenarios that each of us has in terms of our property that we are working with, our own financial scenario, budget, etc., as well as just what our long-term investment strategy is really like and what our goals and objectives truly are. And so with that said, I'm going to try to give some general insight into this decision, some things that maybe you should be thinking about as you grapple with this decision. First and foremost, I would say start with the numbers. Start with the financial side of things and figuring out what makes sense for you, again, with the backdrop of your long-term investment strategy. I love real estate. I love rental real estate specifically. I'm a huge believer in it. We manage a lot of homes for different clients across the Austin area. And I'm also a personal owner of rentals as well. And I've just seen the power that rental real estate can do for a portfolio that's really amazing. And I'm excited about it and think highly of it. However, with that said, it's not for everyone. And there's some cases where selling a home is just the right thing to do at that given time. So let me give us a little bit of backdrop for the financial piece specifically. I would say most folks, when they're doing this decision, they start with cash flow, which is a logical place to start. What is my home going to likely rent for when I put it on the market? And what are my actual costs? What is my mortgage cost? What are my taxes? What are my insurance costs? What would maintenance costs likely be? And things of that nature. And then what would that net cash flow number look like on a monthly basis? Again, a very reasonable and frankly reasonably simple place to start when you're doing that decision matrix. What I would encourage you to do is certainly do that I just mentioned, but take it several steps beyond that when you're considering some of the benefits of renting a home out specifically. Cash flow is one, of course. The other one would be depreciation, which is a tax strategy write-off that you can use when you are owning an investment rental property. It enables you to lower your tax burden on your other income that you probably have elsewhere, W-2 or elsewhere, which can be hugely powerful and frankly is a large reason of why many investors are even in the rental game is because of that depreciation write-off, which is very powerful. I would encourage you to talk to your CPA about that and get educated on what depreciation can do for you. Thirdly, debt paydown is a huge factor. You're letting the tenant essentially make those, in essence, make your monthly mortgage payment for you, paying your debt down over time, which can be, again, really powerful. And then finally, which this has been a really big factor in Austin for the last 20 years, frankly, and that's property appreciation. So as you're holding that home over a long-term cycle, the home is hopefully, right, and it has in our case here in Austin, has gone up in value for most years. And so you hold that home for a long period of time, you're getting the benefit of that property appreciation over the long term. I don't know about you. I have owned many homes throughout my life. And as I look back at those homes, with almost no exceptions, I regret selling them, frankly, because I look back and say, gosh, if I had just held on to that home, leased it out, look at what it would be worth in value today if I had held on to it. So again, that's not right for everyone, but for my case, my experience has been that I've always regretted when I've sold a property, just looking back at what the value could have been had I held on to it for a longer period. So certainly do that with your advisors, financial advisors, and see what makes sense for you. But definitely take the suite of return drivers that I just mentioned far beyond cash flow and think through what might make sense. We can certainly help you with that if you need some help determining what that mix might look like and if a home you're thinking about leasing out could be a profitable endeavor for you or not. There's also other advisors as well in your local markets that can do that. So certainly reach out for that help if you need it. I would also say some people are just as part of their goals and their objectives for their long term, they really want to own rental real estate. It's always been something they've had as a goal, plan in their mind, they want to do for the long term. And so if that's you and you've been that person that's wanted to own rentals, then certainly, by all means, encourage you to investigate that and look into that. And maybe this is a good time for you to do that. On the flip side, if it's not, right, if that sounds extremely stressful and it's not something that you have had as a goal for your own life, then perhaps it doesn't make sense, right? Maybe selling is the right path for you to go down. The other thing I would say is something to think about is looking at the rental demand in your local market, wherever you're located. That's certainly going to be a huge driver in whether you have a positive or a negative experience. If you're somewhere that really tenants are not really wanting to be in, there's not a huge demand for folks to move there for whatever reason, then maybe it's not a great area, right, to own a rental in. That's certainly possible. On the flip side, if it's somewhere that is active, that tenants are actively moving to, then it could be a fabulous opportunity to turn that home into a rental. A lot of folks coming out of the last few years have the benefit of having a really amazing low interest rate on their primary residence. So certainly if that's you, that's another factor that I think would lend itself towards perhaps a rental mindset, because you've locked in that 30-year rate at a very low interest rate, and those rates certainly are not around today. Who knows if they're coming back, but probably not in the short term at least. So that's another factor perhaps as you're making that decision of, should this be a property that you hang on to at that lower rate because it's already locked in? So it makes really good sense versus buying another property, purchasing it today at a much higher interest rate, and it being harder to make the math work. So certainly think through that. The other decision I would sort of put in front of you to think about would be your own personal time, energy, and expertise in managing a rental property. For some folks, that sounds exciting. That sounds like no big deal. They have excess time. They have a little bit of experience perhaps in this area. And so this is really not a huge obstacle for them to think about owning and self-managing that rental home. So certainly if that's you, I would go all in on that and encourage you to pursue that for sure. If you're not in that camp where you don't really have excess time, you've got a lot going on, and maybe you don't have experience either, or one of the two of those things is true, then I would say certainly I wouldn't give up on the idea of owning a rental. I would just perhaps look at the idea of engaging a professional property manager to be able to offboard and delegate some of that responsibility to a professional third party that can do things like lease the home, prep it for market, collect rent, do maintenance, make it a pretty turnkey experience for you. There are folks out there like us, we're one of those, but there are others as well that do that on a daily basis. And so I would certainly encourage you to think about that if you don't find yourself having that time, energy, or experience to do this on your own. Lastly, I would think through perhaps just the maintenance cost. Every home, whether you've lived in a property or you live there now or you don't, either way, homes eventually over time need maintained, right? Things naturally break down, whether they've been used or not used properly. Maintenance is just a fact of life, unfortunately, with properties. And so I would factor that into your budget plans as you're thinking through what you might need to spend. In our case, we always tell clients to budget, at least mentally or on paper as they're doing their math, about 10% of your monthly rental income, putting that mentally aside into a maintenance reserve fund, let's call it, and using those funds for maintenance costs when they arise. Hopefully, your experience is far less than 10%. For many of our clients, it is far less than 10%, but I always feel like it's better to be over-prepared and then pleasantly surprised if you're not spending that amount of money on maintenance costs. So budget that in, because it's just, again, it's a matter of time. Things like air conditioners, water heaters, garbage disposals, like things that take natural wear and tear eventually will break down over time. So you want to plan that in to your calculus as you're making this decision. Hopefully you found a little bit of value there and it's kind of gotten the wheels turning as far as thinking through what might make sense for you and this property that you're considering. If you found this video helpful, We'd certainly ask you, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. We'd love to stay in touch with you and provide more value over time. If you have questions, we're always open. Happy to answer those questions, both from a practical perspective, but also long-term in nature and thinking through what might make sense from an investment perspective. So thank you so much and have a great day.